In response to Sukadvaja's question, how do pleasure and pain arise even in the absence of the concerned object, Brahmana said, the cause is the impression received by the heart through the body, the eyes, etc. Later this expands by itself. When the heart is agitated, the memory agitates the jiva in its kundalini abode. The nadis which branch out throughout the body are affected. Pleasure experiences and pain experiences affect the nadis differently. The nadis expand and blossom, as it were, in pleasure, not in pain. So here we've got the yogic description of emotions. We don't let things go. We're impressionable. Things make an impression on us. We feel up, we feel down, happy, unhappy, and so on. We dwell on these things. We dwell on them. We experience it in our body. Emotions are not intangible things, they're physical things. You feel cut to the core sometimes. We're actually a mass, a lava pit even, of emotions. Our body could be considered as such. Whenever you feel upset or happy, it's worth taking your attention to wherever you're experiencing that unhappiness or that happiness. It's in the body. The pulse races. The throat goes dry. The gut tightens. The face goes red. All our emotions are physiological, and we can direct our attention to them. Here it's spoken of in terms of kundalini and nadis. Nadis are the channels of subtle energy, of life force, of prana. And the kundalini is, in a way, the primordial or root emotions based at the bottom of the spine. Emotions which often come out sexually, to express themselves sexually. So it's making a distinction here between pleasure experiences and pain experiences. Pleasure experiences are expansive. They blossom, as it were, in pleasure, not in pain. So perhaps they contract in pain. When the jiva does not thus enter into the agitated nadis, it is liberated. So the jiva is the personality. And this is the yogic understanding. If you don't get caught up in these things, then this is what liberation is. Bondage is none other than the subjection of the jiva to pleasure and pain. When such subjection does not exist, there is liberation. The jiva gets agitated at the very sight of pleasure and pain. However, if through self-knowledge it realizes that pain and pleasure do not exist in truth, then it regains its equilibrium. Or if it realizes that these do not exist in itself, nor does it, the jiva, exist in them, it realizes total freedom. If it realizes that all this is nothing but the one infinite consciousness, then again it attains equilibrium. Like a lamp without fuel, it does not get agitated again, for the jiva itself is then realized as a non-entity, and it is reabsorbed in the consciousness of which it is but the first thought emanation. So, as I said in the previous video, the last 4 paragraphs of chapter 85 seem to be like an interpolation from a yogic perspective. This yogic perspective is obviously trying to understand self-inquiry. The yogi likes to put himself beyond pleasure and pain, beyond body sensations. In the previous chapter we are told that as long as there's a body, there's always pleasure and pain, happiness and sorrow. And the sage can get caught up in that at any time if the sage is not vigilant. Even the Buddha, it's well documented that he suffered pain, physical pain. He was the victim of 1 or 2 assassination attempts, and one of them wounded him quite seriously, and he was severely hurt. He suffered from back pain and the most awful pain towards the end of his life. So the enlightened person is not beyond pleasure and pain. The yogi might be. Yogis can do extraordinary things. Yogis can dissociate themselves entirely from their body, perhaps. This is the understanding, and it seems reasonable to presume this. They can put themselves into some kind of trance. We can see this with hypnotists. You can go beyond pleasure and pain by being hypnotized. It's not a mystical or spiritual thing, being beyond pleasure and pain. What is spiritual is going beyond the drama of pleasure and pain, going beyond the drama of being deliriously in love or some kind of martyr, some kind of victim. We're attached to our pleasure, we're attached to our pain, they're part of our identity. Liberation is being free from the stories of pleasure and pain, but there are still sensations which are going to be extremely uncomfortable. If you've realized the self, then you accept that these are sensations and that they're uncomfortable, but you don't sort of start dwelling on the idea of, oh, when's this going to end? Why is it happening to me? So it's the stories of pleasure and pain that we go beyond. Asked by Sikudvaja to elaborate on how the pleasure experiences leads to the loss of energy, the Brahmana said, "As I said, the jiva agitates the life force. The movement of the life force extracts the vital energy from the entire body. This energy then descends as the seminal energy, which is discharged naturally." So when this kundalini energy at the base of the spine is poked, when it's agitated by the individual, then the first point of outlet is the genitals. So all the emotional energy gets channeled into the sex organs. This is actually in the context of the story of Narada, who was overcome by lust. And as we'll find out in the next chapter, it seems that he actually ejaculated with certain consequences, and we'll find out about that shortly. Asked what is nature, the Brahmana said, "Originally Brahman alone existed as Brahman. In it, innumerable substances appeared like ripples on the surface of the ocean. This is known as nature. It is not causally related to Brahman, but it happened like a coconut accidentally falling when a crow happened to alight in it. In that nature are found diverse creatures endowed with diverse characteristics." We make this causal connection between the crow and the coconut falling, but there isn't any, it's just a coincidence.